Welcome to No Borders with Brian and Carrie. Today we are discussing reaching financial freedom at 50 years old, those steps to that early retirement.
Yeah, what does your retirement look like? How are you going to go about getting to that goal that you envision?
Yeah, for a lot of people, this is a goal. It's a lot of people probably a very unattainable, or they feel an unattainable goal. What we have found, though, in our 3 years of travel, especially if you were willing to go travel outside of the United States, maybe until you reach that true age of retirement, it is feasible.
It is doable. It's just, how do you want it to look? What are your goals? What are your aspirations? What do you need in your life at early retirement? So the first step is just to define what you want that retirement to look like. Do you have hobbies? Do you have things that you want to do? What are your living arrangements going to be like? All of those things you need to figure out well in advance.
Yeah, there's a lot of thought process that goes into this part of it, because for each of us, that picture of retirement looks very different. Both Brian and myself are pretty easygoing, not really high maintenance people as far as needing a lot of extras. We don't eat out a lot. We don't need a lot of that. But for a lot of people, they envision retirement as kind of the high life,
Right.
Like you've worked all your life and you want to go enjoy all those luxuries now. So if that's what your retirement looks like, you might want to be saving a lot more.
Pump the brakes. You might want to wait. That's right. Now, I used to golf. I don't golf anymore. Now, when I say I used to golf, I would go maybe once or twice a month in those summer months up in the Pacific Northwest, where I only might be golfing 4 or 5 times a year, weather dependent. Now, if you're an avid golfer, if you're somebody that likes to go out and go fishing all the time, you might have to put some of those things on hold.
Right. Or, if these are things you want to do in retirement, you need to make sure that you are including that in what your retirement plan is going to look like. So that's extra money you have to save, because those hobbies cost a lot of money.
Those hobbies cost a lot of money. Another thing is, what are your living arrangements going to be like? Like Carrie was saying, we feel like we can live the simple life. When we started out, our Airbnbs and our accommodations we were booking were very simple. Now, we've upped that.
Yeah, we have changed that.
We've changed that because our vision of what it was going to be like was different than what it turned out to be. We thought that we would be out sightseeing and seeing all the sights and laying on the beach and doing all these really cool, fun activities. We won't be home very much anyway. Well, we were wrong. We were home a lot more than we anticipated, for good reason. So we did have to up that budget a little bit on our accommodations, something that we didn't envision.
Yeah, exactly. And plus, one of the things that you want to look at as well is, are you going to have a home? Like, as far as, when I say home, we all pretty much have a home, but are you going to be owning a house, right? There's a lot that goes into that. A lot of people think that as soon as they reach retirement age, their goal is to have their house paid off. A paid off house doesn't come with nothing. It's not like it's free and clear. You still have taxes, you have insurance, you have maintenance, and you have those unexpected big expenses sometimes.
Right.
A new roof, a new siding on your house that just needs to be painted, or the water heater goes out. Those are all those things that you kind of have to count on later.
Yeah, and those are things that you really want to keep in mind before you decide to quit your job and do what we're doing.
Now, the next step that you want to take is you really want to evaluate your finances. This is, the first part, evaluating what you want your retirement to look like, is kind of the fun part. This part of evaluating your finances and where things stand right now and what you're going to need is the not as much fun part.
Right. Can you afford what you envision? Now, I know that I jumped the gun a little bit on my whole process. And that's kind of why we decided to do this YouTube thing, is to see if maybe we could generate a little extra income to maybe offset some of those bills. And thank God you're watching, and we've been able to do that somewhat. So I would say that if you don't think you can afford it, wait just a couple years. If you think you may possibly be able to, why not go for it? You will not regret it.
Now, this is where you need to really sit down and review your income, your expenses, and your debts. Get it all down on paper if you haven't already. That way you really kind of get a clear picture of it, because now you have to start to figure out how you're going to get those debts paid off, because that's really number one. You can't retire with a bunch of debts, and you need to figure out where you can cut all those expenses.
Yeah, now we were debt free when we started this whole process, and that was the key component for me for jumping the gun. I'm debt free, and I thought about what the worst case scenario would be, and the worst case scenario didn't seem to be as bad as the current situation that I was in, which also wasn't bad, but this is much better.
Yeah, I think we were both just ready to hit the road. We were ready to just be done. But yeah, we both had to really evaluate our expenses. We had to evaluate where we could cut back. The goal for us at that point was very much to get as much money as we possibly could, as quickly as we could, into our bank account. And the key way to do that was getting any debt paid off. Both of us very much live debt free. Even to this day, everything is paid off. We pay off our credit card every single month, if not a couple times during the month. We never carry a balance. It just makes it much more cut and dry when you know exactly what's coming in and exactly what's going out.
One other thing you want to look at also is what your future earnings may be as far as your 401ks, your pensions, anything that you have invested that you might not be able to get to currently. What is it going to look like 6, 8, 10 years down the road? So once you've figured all that out, you know what your expenses are, you know what your income is, you know what you're set to get in the future, set a date, have some type of a goal to look forward to so you can really start putting money away to get to that goal. Now, we had a 7-year plan, then it was a 5-year plan, then it was a 3-year plan, and then it became right now. We just went for it. I don't know if I'd necessarily advise that or not. Make sure you have everything in order before you make that final decision.
Yeah, I think that setting the goal date and stuff, that's the fun part, right? Because if you don't really have a goal or a date, it doesn't have to be a specific date, it might just be a year that you plan on having retirement, then you have something you're working towards. I think if you just kind of like, oh, I'd like to retire early, all those extras that kind of come up in the meantime of like, oh, I could buy that new car, or I could go on that vacation, you kind of just fit them in because you don't have that goal date on the calendar.
Right.
You know, I think that's the exciting part, is counting down. Like Brian said, we kept pushing our dates up. Part of that had to do with COVID, some reasons in that. If that hadn't been in play, we probably would have maybe stuck a little bit closer to our plan, possibly.
We did plan for a good year as far as plugging money into that bank account as much as we could for at least a year before we left. So it wasn't like that, but it was closer than we thought it was going to be.
Right, and if you're looking at maybe like how you can get more money plugged away, we did do a video where we covered kind of our process of how we narrowed that down, of like the areas we cut and how we were able to just minimalize things and stuff. So maybe check that video out as well. When you have set your date, your kind of go date, right, you also need to set what is your goal target for the end, but also what is your goal target per month. You need to have an amount that you want to get put away every month, because like we said, without that goal written down, it's very easy to veer away from it and find a reason why it just didn't work that month.
Right, and I would say whatever that goal is, make sure you pay out that debt first, get that out of the way, then start saving your money.
Now that you know what your goal is for the end and you know what your goal is for the month, you need to start to set that budget. The budget is a very strategic. You need to write everything down, track all of your expenses, maybe do this for a couple months, gives you a really good idea of where all your money is going. Start to cut some things back.
Yeah, I was just going to say, you know, when you start doing this, you start realizing how much money you're wasting. It doesn't seem like a waste at a time. It seems like it's just something you want to go do, or something you might want to buy. But when you look back, was it really worth buying that, whatever it was? Probably not, because you've got this goal of early retirement. Would you rather have a Starbucks every day for 30 days, or would you rather retire early? Those Starbucks add up. Those beers add up. I did cut back on a lot of that as well. I still am. So it's just those things where you have to sacrifice to get to that end goal.
Now, when you have started to kind of cut those areas, your goal and your priority very much needs to be on your savings and your investments. Get that money put away, get it put into a location, you're not touching it. And you know, the fun part of this is that as you start to see it go up and get closer to your goal amount, that's a lot of fun. And I would say that the motivation becomes more so as you start to see it get bigger and bigger.
It starts to snowball. Now there are apps and tools available for you to use to help you along your way. I use Carrie. She's the tool that I use to keep me on track. Now she does use an app to keep her on track. So those things are all things that you want to use because they really do help.
Yeah, I think that sometimes we can think in our head like, oh yeah, no, this week I didn't spend very much money. It's kind of like for me, I don't like carrying a lot of cash because at the end of the day, I don't know where cash went.
Right.
There's not a track record to it unless you keep every receipt, which we do, but it's like harder to keep track of. So by keeping track of everything, putting it into an app, like I said, I use an app called Travel Spend. I use their free version. There's plenty of other apps out there. It takes you maybe a couple minutes at most at the end of the day to track if we stopped and grabbed a beer, if we went to the grocery store, if we took a bus somewhere. But we are tracking every single penny as our days go on, because at the end of the day, I'd be like, wow, we spent a bit much today. Tomorrow, we're going to take it a little bit lighter.
Yeah, those 3 margaritas we had last night, we're not drinking any margaritas today. So we're going to cut back.
They were actually pretty inexpensive.
They were inexpensive. They were tasty, too. They're really
Health-wise, we're not going to have them today.
Right. Maximize your contributions to your retirement accounts. Very important. If you can catch up after the age of 50 or 55 to what you can put into those accounts, do it. That's what I did. Now, I can't get to that money now until I'm 59 and a half, but I started contributing into that account monthly. It got addicting for me. So I did that early on, and I'm glad I did.
Yeah, those accounts, it's great because the earlier you can start to invest into them, then you start to see that compound interest just start to build. And like Brian was saying, the catching up after 50 years old, they allow you to be able to put extra money into your retirement accounts to do that kind of catch up, because we all have a lot of crap that goes on when we're younger that comes up. We're buying houses, we're raising children and everything. So when we're a bit older, we have maybe, we hope, a little bit of more availability to funds to put into those accounts.
And if your employer matches your contribution, take full advantage of it. You're just burning money if you're not. Take advantage of that, maximize it, because what you get in your paycheck might be what you spend. The less you get in that paycheck, 15%, 16%, you don't have it, so you won't spend it. It goes into your retirement fund, which is always good.
Yeah, and that is one of those areas where it's interesting, because when you're filling out the paperwork and you're going to be having them take that money out of your account to invest, at the time it feels like, oh, that's a lot of money. Boy, I'm really going to notice that. And sure, you do notice it initially, but then it becomes the new norm. It's kind of like when you get a raise, that new amount on your paycheck just becomes the new norm, and you start to live, typically, that's just kind of the American way. You live now within whatever is coming in. So when it's out of sight, it's out of mind.
Right.
I also, you want to also make sure you're not just doing those. When we're talking about those savings plans, you want to be having a good chunk of even the money that's coming in as well on that paycheck. Get that into your own savings and investments that you're doing outside of those.
Yeah, don't just stick it underneath your mattress. That doesn't do you any good.
No, invest it.
That does a little good, but invest it.
Another important thing that you need to do is build an emergency fund. The recommended amount is 3 to 6 months living cost. We would definitely recommend that. When we started traveling, so when post-retirement, we had that emergency fund, and thank goodness we did, because that emergency fund, especially in retirement, allows you to not have to draw out of investments in the situation that the market is crashed, which exactly what happened as soon as we left out on the airplane. I think it just went.
Right. As soon as we left,
and it did it for about 2 years. So we had living expenses put away that we were able to draw on. But this is even more important during the savings time and the prepping time. You don't want to be thrown off track by those unexpecteds coming up.
Right. Now it could be an injury. You could break your arm. You could do something like that. I've covered this before. I had to buy a new laptop, which I was not expecting. I used that fund that was just hiding over here that I knew it was there, but it was for something that I had to do. So I had to buy a laptop. I had the money to do it. It didn't come from my daily expenses. So it really it benefited me. Carrie hasn't had to use hers yet.
No. I used it on living expenses during the crash.
Well, yeah.
Yeah, and then we just replenish it as time goes on. But the beauty of an emergency fund is that it is money. It's not money that's really going anywhere. You know, you have it there. You have it safely invested because you want to be able to access it.
Right.
So you don't want it to be in something that's volatile that you can't get to or that you don't want to get to. But the thing is that like for us, as soon as you then say round that corner and you're now into retirement, you still have that emergency fund for the same reasons. It just protects you.
Explore additional income streams. Now, this is something that we did well ahead of time. Like I said, for me anyway, I jumped the gun. I knew that we'd have to do something to keep it rolling. And YouTube was the answer. Now, we had camera gear we had to buy. I mentioned the laptop I had to upgrade. All that camera gear, most of that camera gear we've not gotten rid of, and we've simplified it. But we did have to make an initial investment just to be able to do YouTube and do these videos to try and generate something. We had no idea what it would bring. We still have no idea what it could bring, but we are happy we started it because it has taken some of the bite off our finances.
Yeah. It's definitely given us a little bit of wiggle room, which has been really nice. It's allowed us to, when we said that we kind of our desire for nicer accommodations, we had a little bit of extra money coming in to be able to do that. You know, and you can find things that you enjoy. It doesn't necessarily have to be because you're already working, right? You're already working, you're putting money way out of that paycheck. So find something you enjoy. It might be blogging, it might be photography. There's a lot of other things you can do. You may have rental income coming in as well. You know, you can find that passive income source as well. There's a lot of different ways that you can have it come in.
Yeah, we did a whole video on that. But if you do those things, one of them, you can do those 3 margaritas if you want to.
Now, planning ahead, you really need to start looking at what are your options for medical when you retire early. Now, if you're going to be staying home and staying in the States, your options may be a little more limited. You may have the option of, say, an ACA plan, but you want to look and see how much income can you have coming in before you really start to pay a lot for that. For us, because we're traveling, and if that is your plan, you can then do like a global policy, but all of those are going to very much vary by your age. So if you look and say you're going to retire at 50 years old, you need to also look and see what is that plan going to cost you at 60 years old.
Right, and ours, we've announced in the past, and we will in the future, what we're paying for our medical insurance. That's a whole different video. But we do know that right now I'm 54. I know that I'm paying what I'm paying, and I know that's going to continue to go up the older I get, and that's just a fact of life. So plan for that. Yeah,
and then as well, when you are looking at your budget and what things are going to cost you in retirement, make sure that you are looking at Medicare. Medicare is not just free. There's a lot of extra plans that they expect you to add on to them. There's other restrictions. So start doing that homework and research now so that you're not surprised later. And granted, within the period of time you plan to retire and say that time that Medicare kicks in, all of this can change very much. But it's better to veer on the knowledge side of knowing as much as possible and planning as much as possible than to be surprised.
The insurance is the biggest bugaboo of this entire process. Yes, you can save. Yes, you can be debt free. Yes, yes, yes. And then you run into that insurance, and then it's like, maybe it can be done. Trust us, but you need to do your research. Okay, I think this next one is very, very important. We're not financial advisors. You best not take just our advice. I'm not even sure if I should have taken my own advice. If you would like to reach out to a financial advisor, a professional, it might be a good idea.
Yeah, and you know, there's plenty of people that aren't really comfortable looking at all those numbers and looking and trying to figure out what that's going to look like later. Are they going to have enough money? It's a very nervous area and uncomfortable area for plenty of people. So yeah, reach out to somebody, sit down with all your finances and see. One thing we are going to say, just from our own experience from ourselves and from talking to other people, a financial advisor is doing their job because it is their job. So their job is not necessarily say, sure, you only need to come see me once, get out of here, you're good to go. Yep. Their job is to look at your finances and plan really strongly forward, as far as they're gonna want you to have probably a lot more money than what you may need to have. And
they're there to protect you.
They're there to protect you.
Which is great.
It is great, but the problem with it is that sometimes they can veer people away from retiring early when they absolutely have the resources to do it otherwise. But there's this idea for some reason in the United States that you need to have some astronomical number before you can retire. And if you go and you watch our playlist for our cost of living videos living outside of the United States, that is very much not the case. Right. So just take it. If you need that guidance, then go get it. But also kind of go in with a little bit of knowledge as well of what you're going to need when you're truly on the road traveling.
And that gets back to envisioning what you want your retirement to look like. Your financial advisor's vision might be different than yours.
The key here is make sure that you just stay very flexible with your retirement plans. Things happen, things come up, changes happen. Like we said, we moved ours up faster. You may do that. We've talked to plenty of people who have done that. Or you may have to, because of some life event, have to move it out a little bit further. That's okay as well. Just remain flexible.
Just start the process. Sacrifice those 3 margaritas today so you can have 3 margaritas 2-3 years down the road. You will not regret it.
All right, well, if you'd like to find us on other social networks, you can find us on Instagram and Facebook at Brian and Carrie, and you can find us on our website where we have some free travel resources for you at brianandcarrietravels.com.
Don't forget about that newsletter.
Yeah.
That newsletter, she works hard on it. Sign up for that newsletter. We won't spam you. It's once a week, not a big deal.
Links down below.
Links below. Thank you so much for watching. We appreciate it. We'll see you next time.
Cheers.